Hello and welcome to the Relax. It's Retirement Podcast with your host, Josh Leonard, where we talk about transitioning into retirement with intent. I'm Wendy McConnell, along with Pete Belcastro, and of course, Josh.
Oh,
Hello, fellas.
Hey, Wendy.
hi, Wendy. How are you today?
Oh, we are hanging in there. We're doing good. We're doing good. It's summer. You are about to embark on your big thing for the summer, the
Yep.
big race. So get us up to speed. How's the training going?
Good. My back's sore. My wrists are sore. Bike's in the shop.
And
So good.
you're training then. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm glad that I came out here to Colorado early to get some training in on the actual terrain that I'll be riding in, adjust to elevation. I was telling the team this morning, I have to remind myself to breathe. At sea level, I don't think about it. It's just one of those human things that we do. But here it's like, I don't know. You gotta breathe a little bit more. 30% less oxygen at the elevation that we're at. So have to be
So the
efficient
bike's in the
with your
shop. What does that mean? Is it something wrong or are we just fine tuning?
fine tuning, making sure those brakes work. It's pretty important going downhill. Making sure that it shifts well and everything. So having a local mechanic here look over it early part of this week, and race is next weekend. So
We have all the confidence in the world in them. It's
Yep.
it's pretty amazing being out there. Yeah, I mean, being in 2,000 feet to try and add 10,000 feet to that. So turns out
Yep.
that the best place to prepare and train for a race up in the mountains is in the mountains.
Yeah.
You
Go
know,
figure. Yeah.
Who'd have thunk it?
that's
Yeah.
right.
Right?
And-
Okay. So
So now we're gonna figure out. Hey, that's the best place to train for a bike race. What's the best place? We're wondering. Where the best place to retire is. So Josh actually found an article about that.
Yeah. So Bankrate does a study once a year talking about the 10 best states to retire. And CNBC kind of jumped on it, did an article. So Pete and I were going to kind of pick that apart today, talk about some of the criteria they use to say why such and such state is the best state to retire for this year, and then talk about what we've experienced with clients and some other factors you should consider.
okay, so are we going to talk about the states themselves, or are we just going to talk about what makes them good and make everybody wait?
Oh, well, we need a little bit of a cliffhanger, so we won't tell them what they said the number one state was quite yet. You'll have to stay tuned, Wendy.
Okay. Sounds good. So let's talk about what makes a state great to retire in.
Yeah, so according to their ranking, they have some weighted factors, and the first one is affordability, which makes up 40% of their weighting. So when you think of affordability, you think of things of like cost of living, and then also those state and local taxes. Um, you know, Pennsylvania, where many of our clients are, we have a pretty reasonable cost of living. If you're going to relocate to somewhere like California or even in Colorado here, where I am currently, your cost of living is a little bit different. We want to factor in those state and local taxes as well. So maybe the actual cost of living isn't that high, but it's a very high tax state. That would be something that, you want to make sure you factor into your cost for retirement as well.
One of the things that I thought was interesting is when you were talking about how it's certain accounts are taxed. When you talked about how your father moved from Pennsylvania to Indiana, then what was the disparity there?
Yeah, so it's Pennsylvania to Ohio. But Ohio taxes your retirement accounts upon distribution. PA taxes them when you contribute. So my dad and mom were fortunate enough that they got to pay taxes on the way in while living in Pennsylvania. And now that they're Ohio residents, they're paying on the way out as well. So, there's no reciprocation there. It's just, you could call it double taxation. But different...
Some would, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, different states handle things different ways. So being aware of that is very important to you. Now, if you've always lived in Ohio, well, it's always kind of, unless you want to try to time it out and move across the border to PA and avoid paying that taxes at all, but those are things that we should think about. Now, in this study, they give that affordability category 40% weighting. So that's a pretty hefty weighting. The next one, they have overall well-being at 25%. And that's for things like arts and entertainment centers, and number of adults over 62 was one of the things they highlighted as well. So maybe a peer group, but I think that depends on your individual needs too. We hear from some clients, I don't want to hang out with a bunch of old people, right? So maybe that isn't the best factor for you. I think.
Well, I think that availability of pickleball is probably a pretty big factor.
Now, is that inclusive of being 62 plus, Wendy? I don't think so, though, right? You could have a diverse
No, you don't
age group.
have to be in your 60s, but it's very popular among people
Okay,
over
touche.
60.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Don't try and put me in the corner, Josh.
Don't worry, Wendy. I'm not aging you out here.
So I think you're walking down that road though, Wendy, as we're talking about just that, affordability being 40%, overall well-being being 25%. And we're going to keep going down this road, but maybe that's more than 25% to you, So that pickleball, those arts, that entertainment factor might be a little bit different. So just kind of a little foresight there, but I guess continuing on, Josh.
Yeah. I think the other factor that they weighted at 10% is weather as well. So evaluates the average annual temperature. So, it's warmer climate. Typically, you get to spend more days outside, right? If it's freezing cold, it's a little bit harder. Unless you particularly enjoy that.
That's why Arizona and Florida are such big states to retire to.
That's right. Yeah. Southern states in general get a lot more retiree activity. It's a little bit easier. We've heard clients say things like, as you get older, your bones hurt, and it's nice to be in that warmer climate and avoid the harsh winters. I think also in weather, we can think about things like natural disasters, such as tornadoes, hurricanes, and earthquakes. So, no one wants to be getting their house plowed over by a tornado once a year. That's not really good. Or living on a fault line where your house is shaken to pieces every year, or getting swept away in a hurricane. So those are factors as well. And that would work against a place like Florida, where we have seen those hurricanes hit quite regularly,
Yeah.
Based on its geographic location.
Yeah, absolutely. So what else do we have to keep in mind?
I think crime was the other one that the article cited. They gave that a 5% weighting. So the number of violent crimes and property crimes, right? Of course, if we worked really hard to save for retirement, we want to live in a place that we're comfortable and feel safe as well. We don't want our car to be stolen every night or live in fear of being physically injured.
Ever.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. I think that we're having so much fun. We skipped one. We're talking about the cost of
we did.
Medical.
Yeah, healthcare.
Yeah.
Healthcare. That's slightly important in retirement, right, Wendy?
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because, you break some bones here and there, or you need a, shot of something, or that's not like alcohol, but like a shot.
Yeah. I think healthcare is a big thing in retirement. You can take shots. We could look at proximity of bars too, Wendy.
Yeah, you know how I'm all about the bars. But like, is it really a drastic difference from state to state in the cost of healthcare?
It can. Yeah, cost of healthcare can be different state to state. I think more so what we hear is the quality. Cost can certainly be a factor, but I think it's more important that they can just fix your ailment, especially in retirement. I mean, retirement is the time when we statistically are going to need healthcare more than ever. So let's make sure that we have that quality care available to us as well. One of the things that the study looked at too is the number of healthcare establishments. So, hey, if you live in this area, is there enough, enough resources for you? Not only the cost, but the number of those resources as well.
Yeah, I mean the most money that we spend on healthcare, is towards the end of our life, and oftentimes it's some sort of complicated care. So you need some sort of specialist. So, if you had to travel, I don't know, an hour, 2 hours, or even states away, just imagine being, deep in retirement, or you are, even on some sort of assisted living. That category could be a big factor. So I think that's the one thing that kind of opened my eyes whenever I was reading this. And you kind of got to start somewhere. And I don't know if this is the people that they surveyed, that, hey, affordability is going to be the most important thing. Well, if you can't get up, and you're too sick, or you can't get the right care, or most of it doesn't matter if it's cheap to live there, you can't live.
Yeah.
So I think that that's the one thing, is that this criteria and what makes a state something good. There's going to be a lot of different factors that come into play.
Yeah, I think with
You
this criteria, interestingly, they ranked for this year Delaware as the number one state. Um, followed up by West Virginia as second, so the wild and wonderful state. Um, and Pennsylvania, a one close to us, ranked number 7, with Florida trailing just behind that at number 8. When Pete and I were talking through this, I think there's different factors that come into play. Now, this is a study for, looking at the country, what is the best state overall. But I think this is a very personalized decision. I think one of the most important things we hear from clients is that proximity to family. I mean, I think that is key for most folks. You know, Maybe they want to be in a warmer climate, but they also want to show up to their, grandson's t-ball practice or their granddaughter's dance recital. I mean, those things are many times the most important things we hear from our clients as well. Um, so unless Delaware happens to be really close to that dance recital, I don't know that Delaware is the best state. Um, I think we also hear that access to healthcare, whether it's keeping with your same doctor. So if you've lived in the same place for a while, and maybe you've been working through a condition, or you have some pre-existing health conditions, sometimes there's comfort in keeping those existing doctors or being in a network that you have confidence in. I know for a lot of our clients that are in Florida, there's a lot of the same networks have carried through. So maybe it's not the exact same doctor, but they feel confidence in the medical establishment. I know, like in Ohio, Cleveland Clinic is, of course, a huge medical network. They have, facilities down in Florida there as well.
Yeah.
You also have to keep in mind about the lifestyle, though, right? I mean, like you know, that's what retirement's all about.
That's right. So it could be pickleball, Wendy. It could be, this area has the highest per capita pickleball court ratio. So, that could be important. Golf is another common one we hear. Maybe your cost of living is higher because you are living in that warmer climate, but golf is really important to you and you're going to play golf year round. So, okay, that's an expense that we're going to incur. Or maybe you live somewhere like I am now in Colorado, and hiking and skiing are important to you. Well, all summer you can hike for pretty much free. Just got to buy some new shoes and make sure you have appropriate gear. So maybe you can save some money there, even if your housing expenses are higher.
Yeah, I think it's important to, those activities are probably going to change during retirement, right? Probably, maybe the mobility isn't as good, or your interests just change, or let's just say that the you're tired of the golf courses that are around you. So I think that realizing that lifestyle, you know, it could really change in retirement. And like we always talk about, retiring to something. So oftentimes these are things that you've already started planning and you are doing, so that whenever you are in retirement, you have a much clearer path there. And that might even be maybe it's not something physical. Maybe it's just the people that are around you, like social activities,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe the opportunity to volunteer for special charities that are important to you. So those type of things that can really add to your lifestyle in retirement.
Yeah, I know we have one client that comes to mind in particular that part of her social network that is extremely important is her mahjong club that she plays with, on a regular basis, and then also, her church choir group that she's in. So having those, if she relocates to Delaware because it's ranked number one for the best state to retire, she's going to have to reestablish those social networks and reestablish those social activities with a different group of people, which certainly is an attainable thing. But for most folks, you know, you're comfortable with that group, they're your friends, you're sharing that activity together. So, certainly thinking through those things. Hey, if I do relocate, and maybe it makes sense to relocate to be closer to family or for some of these other factors, but how do we balance that all out? Those are common things we hear from clients. I would say also, really think about cost of living in a holistic approach. So, if you're paying more for housing, but you're hiking more, like we talked about, or doing some activities that enhance your life and maybe actually have less cost on a day to day basis, that might balance out okay. We had talked briefly, Wendy, about the taxes in a state like Ohio versus Pennsylvania. So, in that cost of living, breaking down that tax, hey, is there anything I can do with it? In certain states, there's tax breaks at certain income levels. So, maybe that state has retirement tax income, but you're not even subject to it. So, digging a little bit deeper
Yeah.
there could certainly be helpful. I think another one that we're hearing from clients in Florida or people thinking about going to Florida is concerns around homeowners insurance. Because of some of the hurricanes and weather related issues, a lot of insurers are just saying, hey, we don't want to be a part of this state anymore. We're not willing to insure homes there. And that cost for the insurer is still there. They've jacked the prices way up. So now that is a huge additional cost for folks. And if that's where your house is, what are you going to do? You got to pay for it or sell the house. But eventually, that's going to hit the cost of the housing market too.
Yeah. Yeah. It doesn't seem like that's changing anytime soon. So, maybe if your plan was I'm going to find someplace warm paradise to live, maybe not living there, up here in Pittsburgh, we call that doing the snowbird thing. We have a lot of people that head down to Florida, and they, during the winter, maybe it's just January, February, March, even, and then come back. So they try and cut out those the most chilling days up here. So that might even be an option. Maybe even 5 years ago, you thought, hey, we're going to move into this condo, but you know what? I don't want to be down there during the hurricane season. Like we talked about right now in August, we're having those tropical storms. I want to be back where, here in Pittsburgh, where we have to worry about a little bit of flooding and maybe some tornadoes now. So.
Yeah, the hills slow it down, though. The hills slow it down.
That's right. They're mild tornado. Yeah.
But yeah, I think we've encouraged a lot of clients too that, hey, maybe I want to move to Florida. Well, why don't you rent a place for a month and see what it's like to live in Florida in the winter and see if that's something you like. We had alluded to earlier, one of the factors in the study was, that that quality of life, the overall well-being, the number of adults over age 62. We hear it on both sides of the fence. Some clients love, we had one client that bought a house in the Villages, which is a huge retirement community, mega retirement community. And there are endless activities for seniors. Others are like, I don't want to hang out with a bunch of old people. I want to live in a neighborhood where I see the young families and other old folks. And they want that blended type of community. So, maybe trying something out before you buy it is important too. So spending a month or so in Florida, or you know what? I'm going to rent a place every winter in the coldest months up north and, travel around a little bit, check out some different states, live in some different communities, taste the flavor of the different towns. In talking through that, Pete and I also brought up the bucket list, right? So maybe instead of having or relocating to a specific place, maybe sell your house, get an apartment close to the airport, and check out that bucket list those early years in retirement. I think one of the sad realities is we might not always be able to travel. We might not always be able to go see all the national parks or go to Italy or go to Paris, whatever the bucket list might entail. So many times it makes sense to do those early in retirement. So rather than focusing on maintaining 2 homes, one in Pittsburgh, one in Florida, or selling everything and moving to Florida, let's enjoy those years that we have with mobility while we still have them, and knock off that bucket list sooner than later. I think another one that's been popular too is getting the RV or a camper, van, or a tow behind trailer, whatever it might be, and traveling throughout the U.S. I mean, we have so many amazing sights to see within the country too that just being mobile and checking it out is certainly an eye-opening experience.
Absolutely. That's pretty neat though. And it usually, I mean, the way timing goes with our clients, whenever they are kind of getting to that retirement age, it's time to kick off their work boots. Their kids are just getting established in life too. So, it's a global economy, and oftentimes people move out of state and or not where they grew up. So, that kind of, hey, you know what? We're gonna check these items off our bucket list. We're not going to really settle down anywhere, and that might actually work out with your overall planning. That maybe in the future being closer to family, and if your kids end up, here, if they end up down south, like in Washington, PA, which is just outside of the city here, but we call that the South from
it's a whole different country.
North Hills here.
Yeah,
that's
North
right.
Hills, South Hills. It's a Pittsburgh joke right there.
Yeah, sorry. Yes, but but then you can set those routes, and you can hey, your kids are there, and then you can also retire there where your kids are going to be for a longer time. So, a lot of this thinking actually, it's part of a larger plan that if you start taking a step back and really putting into place. It's about trying to. Nobody knows what tomorrow is going to look like, but it's about trying to put everything in place that you can control, and that way, whenever those things that you can't come up, you're well prepared.
Yeah, I think that's it. I think there's always going to be some different trends. I think regionally, people think of things differently too. Here in Colorado, I've met a lot of folks from like Texas or Georgia, where they're trying to get out of that southern heat and come further north into a cooler climate. So, up here in the mountains, it's cooler. I mean, it's 70s during the day. And for them, if it's 90 to 100 regularly, this is a relief that, for us, we're thinking about winter being from the northern states, and we want to go get some warm weather in the winter. Well, sometimes people are moving the opposite way. So, I think in there's opportunities as well where maybe you can do some kind of house swap thing with people too, where you're renting. If you do choose to have 2 residences, renting it out and kind of alternating with another family, or having a rental property becomes an option as well. So I think of not necessarily just, reading a study and picking that top state. That's probably not the best advice we could give you on finding the best.
Oh no, I've packed. I'm ready to go to Delaware.
Yeah, it's yeah. I mean, it's the tiniest state. No, Rhode Island wins with tiniest, right?
That's right. Yeah.
Yes, Delaware is the first state, which means they were the first to sign and ratify the Constitution.
That's right. Yes,
that's right.
Yeah. I know stuff.
There you go. Yeah, but I think that's the thing is we're looking at this list and you see Delaware on top, and West Virginia second, and then Georgia. It's like, well, gosh, if I don't want to do things outside, West Virginia probably isn't going to be even close to my radar. So it's very interesting that all these factors that we have, it really is individualized, and just realizing that if you put these things that are, whatever your retirement criteria is, those things that are important to you, if you put them down, we got such a great country that you will be able to find a place that fits perfectly, and we're really here to help you figure that out, and that's what we do with our clients.
Yeah, I think working with a financial advisor, talking through these decisions and helping to develop some framework for you individually is it 80% important that you're close to your family, rather than access to healthcare resources or volunteer opportunities. I think that customized plan, this is one piece of that overall plan, right? We need to figure out where we want to live and think about our retirement in stages too. Maybe you want to be really close to the kids now because you have young grandkids and you want to be there for those activities. But in 10 years from now, maybe they're growing up more and they're not spending as much time with grandma and grandpa. So maybe you can spend more time out of state. Building that into a plan, even if it's not all decided on day one, factoring and structuring your finances in an appropriate way that you have the needed flexibility is key to a successful retirement. So scheduling a time with someone like Pete or I to talk through that and talk through that decision matrix, thinking through all these factors, is critically important as you're leading up to retirement to make sure you have that retirement success. So make sure to jump into the show notes. You can schedule a 15-minute call with Pete or I. Or if you're just gaining information, make sure you subscribe to the podcast. Check us out on YouTube as well. And check out our website at leonardadvisorygroup.com. If you want to get in contact with us directly, feel free to give us a call at 412-998-PLAN. And until next week, thanks for listening, and we'll see you then.